Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming in a new Elden Ring video. Today we're talking builds though. What are the 10 best builds in the entire game in 1.08? An extremely varied topic to be sure, especially when we know some builds are incredible in PvE but might not be as good in PvP or vice versa. But we can highlight builds that shine at least very hard in one side or overall perform great in both. Frankly though, there are more than 10 options I could put in this list, but here's 10 that are relevant to this day. If you are interested in any of these build concepts, we have builds on every weapon, on every build that is discussed in this video, so you can easily find them on the channel. But with all of that said, let's begin. First then, at 10, we have the Envoy Longhorn and its hilarious Ash of War Bubble Shower. At the bottom of this great build list, I've got a weapon here that's outrageously effective under certain conditions. When placing yourself under a larger enemy, such as a dragon or any boss that's, well, large, you can use this Ash to great purpose. The many bubbles will automatically collide with something you're already pressed up against, and ideally under to pop many times and deal a lot of damage in just a moment. Your DPS will skyrocket and provide an incredibly effective way to take down certain bosses, and very simple and pretty funny looking at that. We can enhance its power using unique armor like say the Envoy Crown, which boosts the bubble damage by 15%, or standard damage increasing options like talismans, self buffs, improving your holy damage and so on. Ultimately this is simple and effective, especially against those larger foes. It's great fun in open world or boss fights, but admittedly it's less effective in PvP where you can't quite cram yourself against players so easily. But it will work if you can catch someone out with those bubbles, even when you're not right up against them. It's just unlikely. Still, the weapon type, the Great Hammer, has actually been improved over time with better recovery and some attacks being made faster, so it's certainly better than it once was. But considering it only really shines in PvE under certain conditions, this is at the bottom of the list for me. Next then, we move up in power. At number 9, we have the Blasphemous Blade combined with Greyol's Dragon Roar. As a weapon, we have Blasphemous Blade being an incredible, somewhat over-tuned one, with great damage and scaling with fire damage built in, lifesteal on hit, lifesteal on kill, long range, wide-reaching powerhouse of an Ash of War. To simply use this weapon is to have a good build, but to enhance it is to push it over the edge and turn it into something even better. For example, with Greyol's Roar, we can reduce the enemy damage by 20% and then make them take more damage by 10%, and that lasts a full 60 seconds now. Combine that with say the 2000 plus damage of each weapon Ash and the massive healing you get while using it, as well as with the build having good HP buffs, high protection armor with high poise, that makes it a trading wonder and an Ash of War spamming machine. In PvP, this weapon deals incredible damage with just the Ash and a basic build alone, but with this build, you're extremely tanky and still able to do good damage per hit. If you combine this weapon with another, like POWERSTANCE, another Faith Greatsword, maybe like the Golden Order Greatsword, you can go to town with that moveset and the damage output that provides, swapping between the different Ashes of War and all the potential with that. Simply having the Blasphemous Blade equipped gives you the on-kill lifesteal, which is hilarious. The build has long-range opportunities and AoE ability, making it great in open world, whether that's PvE or invasions. 400 health roughly with the build we're talking about every time you use Taker's Flames will keep you progressing and alive through new areas and could be a great option in the DLC actually. For number 8, we now have a build based around one incantation rather than a weapon. And that is of course the boss destroying ancient dragon lightning strike. Straight to the point on this one, the incantation is able to dish out huge numbers via one well-timed cast, which you can charge up to deal more damage. Even against the endgame bosses, we're able to see say 10,000 in a charged cast, which is incredible. And the reason behind that is the multiple hits the incant can snag on bosses, especially the larger ones. You send out the red lightning in a wave around you, striking multiple times as it passes through targets, especially if multiple beams of lightning can hit one target like a larger one. There are many ways to boost this damage, and basically in an all-in PvE focused build, you can get things like the Jellyfish Shield buff, things like Howl of Shabriri, Godfrey Icon Talisman, and so on, chunking through boss health every time you cast it, especially fully charged. In PvP, it's a very commonly seen incantation for any Faith build. Great for trading because it covers a really large area while dealing amazing damage. So in new modes like Free For All or Team Deathmatch or in any invasion, you can catch multiple targets even multiple times, especially if you're casting it from off screen, making it much more consistent. But like I said, in duels, you can make it a trading wonder. One mistake on a roll timing and they're going to get hit by this thing. Forcing them to trade into it is even better because they're forcing themselves to take that nasty hit. There's consistent ways to improve the damage without those major downsides in a more PvP focused build. So yeah, this destroys bosses. It fits really well into any Faith build. It works in PvP. It's got really impressive output. It deserves to be on this list, and I think number 8 is a fair fair place. For number 7 though, I am going to be even briefer. The Comet Azur build is one of the most popular and well-known concepts in Elden Ring. Josh made his original build video for this back at the launch of the game, which is now over a year ago, which is crazy, so I don't think I need to spend long on this. It's using the sorcery Comet Azur to shoot what is basically a magic laser beam, which you can hold and channel at a target from really good range. By buffing up the damage of its magic through a wide variety of ways, you can make that initial hit deal great damage, and then while holding it on a target so they're standing in the constant channel, it is a line of pain where the damage will simply evaporate whatever stays inside of it. We have ways to increase how long you can hold that channel, like the wondrous physic that lets you have infinite FP for a short period of time. It doesn't really work well in PvP though, where all that's set up and the channel isn't remotely effective or functional. We can do baby versions that won't deal nearly as much damage, but can catch people out, especially in things like free-for-all and off-camera shots, but even then, it's not exactly a reliable way to play PvP. So I keep it like capped at number 7, just because of how iconic and well-known it is, and how effective it can be in PvE specifically when used correctly. Moving on, we have number 6, which I think should be the Dark Moon Greatsword, which actually has a variety of build options that are very strong. The two I think I should highlight though in this video are the two-handed full charge playstyle, where you're dealing massive hits in a single ranged blow, which is hilarious because it costs no FP beyond when you actually buff it up, just stamina every time you use the heavy attack, which is kind of crazy. Then there's the other one, the power stance version, in which you use health and steeple with the Dark Moon. By buffing up with the health and steeple and then making use of the Dark Moon, you just have extra frost damage. It kind of pushes the weapon's basic attacks and the moveset into something a bit more stronger and reliable. And even in that, you're happy and ready to use the charged heavies of the Dark Moon whenever you want. Maybe you'll quick fire one out in PvP to catch someone out, or full charge it for the massive hits, even then with the option of doing say a jump attack and power stance for a sudden follow-up hit. You could slap in some fire damage like the self buff of Fire's Deadly Sin, cleansing frost debuffs and allowing you to pop those frost procs even more. But I think it's clear there are a few ways to run Dark Moon, and most of them are going to be really strong options straight out of the box. Whatever way you do it, a weapon that can deal heavy damage, good range with no FP beyond the buff up is a crazy concept, and as magic damage is extremely buffable. Things like Terra Magica lets you place a sigil on the ground. While standing in that, your magic damage will be increased by 35%. And there's so many magic damage increasing talismans, channel increasing talismans, Ash of War increasing talismans, and the wondrous physics and so on, the self buffs. You can make this thing ridiculous very easy. And the thing is, it's really effective in both PvE and PvP, making this weapon an all-rounder, effective in all situations. And with a variety of ways to run it, I think it's a top-tier pick and build concept, one I strongly recommend. Halfway up the list now, we are now at the number 5, centered around the concept of the one-shot. A single attack that simply kills the target, whatever target that might be. A while back I made a build video all about this using the Giant's Crusher, in which we buff up as many ways as possible and slam down with a unique heavy that is featured on the Giant's Crusher. Able to easily reach 16k damage, and probably higher depending on the target, in one single hit, whereas able to kill one of the scariest enemies in the entire open world in a single hit. The downside of this concept is much like the laser style build featuring Comet Azur, it's a lot of setup to do something like that, and you'll leave yourself pretty low health to do it just once. Hopefully though, when you do that, whatever you hit is dead, and it probably will be. The thing is, we can easily scale this back to be more functional as a build, using heavy armor and high poise, so we can happily trade mid-fight, landing that big charged heavy attack on a boss regularly. In that case, we'll land probably around 5,000, 6,000 damage a hit instead, which is still really good. All you need to do is a couple body buffs and a weapon buff at the last moment with something like Royal Knight's Resolve, and then just go to town every hit using that unique heavy. This weapon is just a concrete slab on a stick, and it does its purpose, it serves it very well. The downside of this weapon in PvP is it does have, as a colossal weapon, a very predictable moveset. That makes it somewhat easier to avoid. You can make it work with clever positioning, moveset usage, looking for trades or catching people out, and in whatever case, when you do hit, you'll hit them hard. It's just landing, say, the full charge unique heavy, that'd be great, but is very unlikely in PvP. It's so obvious what's happening. But due to how absolutely insane the damage you can reach with this weapon and build is, I think it deserves at least number 5. But now, at number 4 and above, we reach some really scary stuff, and so naturally bleed stuff starts to crop up here. First, a jumping successive hit-based build in the form of, say, twin blades or power stance powerful combos like, say, curved swords. You could go for the scavenger curved swords. Ultimately though, a high bleed option that can hit many times in a short period is going to be strong. The power stance twin blades are a top tier pick for that, due to their great jump attack, which has you strike multiple times with both weapons at good range in one single jump attack. We can enhance the power of jump attacks with, say, a chest piece and a talisman. We can get outrageous bleed potential with buffs like even using post-nerf seppuku or occult BLOODFLAME, or even just base bleed and arcane scaling. This works similar with the scavenger curved swords, multiple hits and one jump attack, bursting damage in tiny windows, but with a more reliable moveset you can use for its basics, which will probably be better in PvP. Simply jump and attack, then repeat, constantly on a target to clean through say 20 or 30,000 health in moments. That's just silly, and we can make this work more consistently in PvP by using the Ash of War, Raptor of the Mist. This has us crouch for a moment and iframe an incoming blow. On success, it'll put you in the air where you're already set up to just do a mid-air attack. While that does take a bit of finesse in PvP, it's very fun and effective when an enemy is not expecting it and you can land it. With one successful jump attack in PvP, you can chunk out most of a health bar and then just play normally to finish them off. In PvE, things are kind of brain off, just jump attack, spam, and get the crazy bleed damage and bursts. In PvP, you make use of Raptor and make it more possible through that. Whenever it does land, it's going to be devastating. So through and through, this is a consistent and powerful concept. Whichever way you swing it, with multiple weapons and weapon types, you can consider to run this. We looked at this concept very early on in Elden Ring's life, and to this day, even very recently, I find it very powerful. Moving up to the top 3 then. Number 3, we have another bleed build. It's our new and improved REDUVIA. REDUVIA in power stance is outrageously effective with the buffs to daggers in our current patch, not only giving them better range, making them more viable in PvP, but they've also increased the pace of those attacks, meaning massive combos and chain attacks come out really quickly. You do not want to trade with that in PvP. They'll take a load of hits, bleed multiple times, and potentially just die right there and then, even if you've got a high health pool. Meanwhile, in PvE, we're able to shoot up to say 30k burst combos and above, no problem. And honestly, with like little thought or skill. The thing is here, we also have that incredible Ash of War, the REDUVIA Bloodblade, which was also buffed. Now with more damage and damage detection on the weapon part, the dagger, you can press up against an enemy and hit them like a shotgun blast of damage and bleed, hitting them with the dagger and the Ash at the same time. It only costs FP to use compared to the neutral version, the normal Bloodblade, which costs health every time you use it. So this is a really strong Ash of War. You can rely on the power stance dagger moveset for successive hits, raising your AR, as well as the bleed procs happening constantly, or you can rely on, say, the Ash to shotgun blast your way through everything, or, probably best, use a clever mix of both, depending on the situation and the punish windows available. This is going to be scary effective in PvE and PvP, and it's got to be one of the strongest bleed options in the game right now. But what would come above REDUVIA? It has to be a weapon that has similar output, but maybe even better damage, and without the downsides of bleed. Because while it's rare, there are enemies that are resistant or even immune to bleed where that would be an issue. A weapon not relying on bleed then would really shine, and of course we have one in the form of MARAIS Executioner's Sword, the successive attack build tied to that. So I'll be fast on this since I spoke about it recently. By landing the corkscrew style Ash of War on target with a build that benefits from successive attacks and Ash of War damage, you will see your AR spike up after that. Follow that with another dancing blade, and you will rip through health bars like it's nothing. The fact that this is true in both sides of the game as well makes it really deadly, because it's a lot more reliable in PvP these days, with the improvements to the weapon's recovery and the ability to actually roll out of the Ash should it go wrong. That fact also helps in PvE if you do miss it, or maybe you're looking to avoid incoming damage because they weren't staggered, allowing you to more consistently land the corkscrew attack without being punished as hard. None of this relies on anything but normal damage, so there shouldn't be anything in-game immune or overly resistant to this concept, making it really reliable. Sure, it takes a bit of finesse and skill in PvP to land that Ash, but one catch on, say, a spellcast or a trade or whatever, and it'll largely be over in your favor. In PvE, you don't need any of that skill. You just blindly go to town anytime there's even a remote punish window, and you can do it from medium range, so you kind of have more access to more punish windows because of that. I don't think I really can say more about it at this point though, so let's move to number 1 for builds in 1.08. At number 1, it is basically any good BLOODFLAME Blade build. BLOODFLAME Blade, the incantation, buffs up your weapon with bleed and fire damage, without having to really commit your stats to reach that bleed normally. This frees up a ton of stats to spend, which can be used in many ways, but honestly, just going for 80 arcane and making the weapon an occult one is a fantastic option. Take 80 arcane on a weapon that already has base bleed, that active BLOODFLAME build, the occult scaling, and any Ash of War that lets you deal a few hits in a short period, and you're going to be really strong. Hilariously, while BLOODFLAME is active active on your weapon, your ashes will then be enhanced by bleed damage. So a ranged ash like Stormblade or Beast Roar, they will deal raw damage all the same, but then they will also cause bleed at range. Maybe you'll use something like Stormcaller to AoE bleed multiple targets, or stagger opponents in PvP, which has a great follow-up awesome swings and slams of the ash itself, making a trade machine. You could slap on, say, a longer weapon like a scythe and use the Ash of War's spinning strikes, allowing you to channel out many hits. That will chainsaw through boss health as you press yourself up against them, much like the MARAIS Executioner's sword actually. Or we could do something silly and fun, like make your own rivers of blood, the Corpse Piler, using, say, the double slash Ash of War, which is the same actual moveset as Corpse Piler without the cursed blood aspect. But with this, with BLOODFLAME, you can make it hit harder than that now because of all the nerfs to rivers of blood. As you can see, there's many ways to run BLOODFLAME Blade as the core of a build, and then make something powerful and unique, and often really fun because of that. It's extremely deadly in both PvE and PvP, and could be the single strongest buff in the entire game. So in my opinion, it has to be the top of the best builds list, especially in the current state of 1.08, and might see some nerfs in maybe 1.09 or whatever the next patch is. But there you have it, my 10 incredible build options in the current 1.08 version of Elden Ring. Of course, there's a lot more than 10 great builds in the game right now. These are just some of the ones I wanted to highlight today in this video. If you've enjoyed the video though, then support it with a quick like. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.